All right. Good morning and welcome to our CharIN Tuesday Middle East with a small delay, which we will try to manage to get in so that we keep the timeline. My name is André Kaufung. I'm the Managing Director of the CharIN Association, and I'm quite happy that we managed to have this Tuesday, that we get interesting inside views of CharIN, but also interesting inside views of the region Middle East, which is getting more and more important for all the big aspects and mega trends we see with sustainability, with electromobility. And I'm happy to guide you through today. From the agenda, what we will do today, we will see on the next slide, is that we will have a short opening word and welcome from Michael Keller from the CharIN Port, from Dr. Saidi from the Clean Energy Council, and then we will have some inside views, some keynotes. Today I will introduce you to the panelists later when we come to each speech, and at the end we will have a moderated panel discussion, and you are invited to, during the keynotes, during the speeches, but in general during the whole meeting, to type in your questions, your comments, and we will moderate the panel session at the end. So to keep the timeline, I would like to give the opening word to Michael Keller to welcome you to our CharIN Tuesday Middle East. Thank you.
I'm Michael Keller, and as a member of the board, also welcome to everybody here in this CharIN Tuesday, our first one for Middle East. It took us some time to prepare and bring everything in place, but we are now very happy to have you all here in this online conference to talk about the next trends, mega trends, and where the Middle East region is going. And we see that as this very growing and very innovative region, which is, I think, also one of the important regions in the world. We are now very happy to have integrated to our CharIN community, and we are looking forward to hear more about this region. And I would like to hand now over to our speakers and wish everybody a nice and interesting and a good conference today.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I would like to give the word to Dr. Nasser Saidi, also for the welcome note from the Clean Energy Business Council.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for making this time available. I chair the Clean Energy Business Council, which promotes clean energy and clean technology across the Middle East, North Africa region. Clean energy, of course, includes one of our working groups, which is a future mobility working group, along with a number of other working groups on energy efficiency, climate finance, women in clean energy, and another one on hydrogen. Of course, as was just pointed out, the big trend, I think, in the decades to come is the transport transformation around electric vehicles and changing our mobility. It also has the scope of changing the way we design our cities. Do we all need the parking lots that we currently have, which occupy maybe 20% of the surface areas in buildings and cities, if we can share electric vehicles? So a lot of transformations are going to come, not just in terms of how we transport ourselves, but how we live, how we interact. So these are extremely exciting times, and I'm very pleased that CEBC is joining forces with CharIN to discuss these trends, but also I think in our discussion today to look at what are the barriers, what is it that we need to do, particularly in this part of the world, to get the electric mobility that we actually need, reduce pollution and all the other positive effects on the environment. So very pleased to partner with you, and let's hope it's a long-term relationship where we can bring in new ways of doing things, new technology, and partner. And particularly, I think my appeal is for Europe to play a much more important role Europe has been a little bit on the sidelines insofar as developments in this part of the world are concerned. So we very much welcome greater involvement by you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saidi, for these nice welcome words in this introduction. And also, I can say from CharIN side, we are very much interested into sustainable and long-term cooperation, and looking forward to this first step, this CharIN Tuesday together. Let me introduce you to our first keynote, our first speech, inside view of today, given by Ahmed Samir El-Bembali from the Clean Energy Business Council. Ahmed will give us an EV market overview in the Middle East and North Africa. And as a reminder again, please feel free to type your questions and comments into the chat window. My team in the back end will give these questions then into the panel round. If we have some time during the presentation or after the presentation, we will maybe have 1 or 2 questions involved. Otherwise, we will guide them into the panel discussion, or we will also come back to you after the session to answer. So Ahmed, the stage is yours. I'm looking forward to your inside view.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and welcome again to the webinar. I try to make my presentation shorter since we have been a little bit late. So just to give a quick overview about the electric vehicle market in the MENA region. So I try to put the light on what has been happening across the region and what is some of the announcements and how we see the outlook as well. And then we'll conclude with some of the challenges that we still see, and also the opportunities that we identified as CEBC across the region. I just have to also clarify there's a lot of differences. So we try to generalize, but I think there's a lot of major differences across the countries within the region. So we'll try to also make sure that that's clear as well. As Dr. Saidi mentioned, we are CEBC, we are not for-profit membership organization based out of the UAE, but we do cover Middle East and North Africa region. One of the topics we cover is future mobility, specifically electric mobility, among other topics including climate finance, hydrogen and energy storage, women in clean energy, and energy efficiency. And the mission that CEBC really does is to accelerate the policy maturity across the region. And that also links well to accelerate the access to financing and accelerate the awareness about the different renewable energy topics across the region. And we do that through different channels. We have policy dialogues with the government entities to connect them with the private sector and understand their challenges. Also, we publish a lot of research, organize a lot of events, and we are very pleased to have this event as the first of a series, hopefully, with CharIN, to talk about, focus a little bit more about on the technology part of the electric vehicle market. So this is a very high-level overview about what is happening across the region in terms of the EV development. So I try to spend like a couple of minutes on each of the on the whole thing. So and try to be quick on some of the countries because there's some of them there's not much happening. So if we start from the left, from Morocco, I think the government of Morocco has been generally looking at renewable energy as a way to localize a lot of technology in terms of the manufacturing. So Morocco has actually, even before EVs, they have a lot of manufacturing plants for a lot of the European automotive companies. And they have tried to use also EV or the transition to EV to start some local manufacturing for electric vehicle and electric vehicle batteries, and even for the chips for used within electric vehicles. We have seen recently a few announcements. They actually already have now a battery manufacturing plant in Morocco, and Opel has announced that they are also going to open a production plant in Morocco. Another chip or electronic chips manufacturing company has decided to also open a manufacturing plant in Morocco, and they are the main supplier for Tesla So I think that creates a movement, and by definition, I think that would change the awareness of the local people about and the perception of EVs, and I think that would increase the uptake of EVs across the country. It's not yet mature in terms of the individual ownership or the EV ownership. I think the main focus has been on manufacturing, but I think specifically manufacturing will, by definition or by nature, enforce more awareness for EVs across the country. Let's take then UAE, for example. I think UAE has been in the forefront of the EV ownership and deployment across the region. I would say it's the most advanced one in terms of the clear policies and the guidelines for owners and companies as well. I'll mention why I say in terms of, because we have another country and the region that's the most advanced in terms of the numbers, but there's some kind of hassle that comes with these numbers because it wasn't really regulated at the beginning. I'll come to that. So if you take UAE, UAE has 7 emirates, so each emirate has different level of progress in terms of the deployment of EVs, the policies they have, etc. And accordingly, the numbers of EVs and charging points as well. Dubai has been the leader. I think even across the region, Dubai has been the leader. Right now in Dubai, there are, I think, more than 6,000 electric vehicles. There are more than 300 charging points. These are the public ones. And most of the EV owners, they have their own charging stations, of course. And there's a lot of private sector initiative, although that Dubai has forced some incentives, including a free charging station, free charging for EVs till end of 2021. And still with that, there's a lot of private companies that have installed their own charging stations and providing the electricity for free. So there's a good movement, and I think that has been a reason for a lot of the ownership of EVs across Dubai. RTA, which is Dubai's Road and Transport Authority, has also started to provide free charging stations for all EVs. There's a lot of other incentives, including, for example, the premium charging, free SALIC, which is the highway toll, free SALIC tag. It's a small contribution, but it's something. And I believe there's a lot to be done still, but all of this started with the Dubai Green Charger Initiative, which was launched in 2014. And so the government or Dubai's target is to have 18% electrification percentage that includes hybrid and electric by 2030 on the roads of Dubai. I think that also will push a lot of the government entities to increase the adoption of EVs and hybrid as well. And generally, if you look at other countries, at the other emirates, Abu Dhabi, for example, they have a unified charging tariff for individuals across the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, which is very, very low compared with the price of fuel. And it's not free, but it still creates an incentive for adoption of ownership. Oman, there's still lack of EV models. I don't think there's officially an EV model that has been launched in Oman. There are perhaps some imported vehicles, but the government is, based on our conversations with them, they are taking the EV market seriously, and hopefully very soon that we'll see an EV strategy for the country of Oman. I think Saudi Arabia is taking a different approach. They're focusing more on the local manufacturing, the capacity building, and the investment side of EVs. They spend so much time to enable or allow the first EV to be imported for individual reasons. And right now, even at this moment, no one can import an EV for commercial purposes, only for individual or personal use. But again, I think this will change soon. We are aware that the government of Saudi Arabia is looking very seriously at the EV market, and hopefully we'll see also soon a comprehensive government strategy for the deployment and increase of the ownership of EVs. Saudi is one of the big investors in Lucid Motors, which is an EV startup based out of California in the US. And one of the things that was announced as there will be a manufacturing facility for Lucid Motors in Saudi Arabia. So I think that would create another traction. The timeline for this haven't been announced yet, or at least I'm not aware of it at this point. But again, I think that gives a good sign that Saudi Arabia is looking seriously at the EV deployment. Hopefully that we'll see that much faster. We are aware of there's a lot of mega projects happening in Saudi for new smart cities, including the city of Neom, the Red Sea Development Company. They have a new city as well on the Red Sea. And both of the cities are supposed to be carbon-free transport. So EVs, public transportation, active travel. And that creates a lot of, or will create a lot of, I think, traction for EVs across the country. We have been part or supporting few of our members who are actually helping those projects to design the EV strategy for these cities. So we are aware that they are seriously considering the EV for these new cities, and hopefully again we'll see that happening very soon. Qatar is already doing a lot of work ahead of the World Cup, and so we have already seen a lot of EV charging stations, especially the fast charging stations installed. And again, I think the World Cup has been a main motivator for this deployment, and hopefully we'll see more equal distribution of these charging stations. One of the issues that we identified across the region is sometimes because of the motivation, it ends up that there's some unbalanced distribution of the charging stations, and accordingly that creates inconvenience for the EV owners, because they might have or find a lot of charging stations at one spot, but where if they go to the office, next to the office, there's no charging stations or not enough charging stations. And I think that's one of the things that I mentioned in the challenges. It needs very early planning and forward thinking about the locations and the design of the EV charging infrastructure plan across the city or the country. And the country I was referring to when I was speaking about the UAE is Jordan. So a few years back, Jordan actually provided a lot of incentives for people to import EVs. So they removed the customs on EVs, and as a result, a lot of people went and imported used EVs. So you had a country that full of EVs literally, but there's no enough infrastructure to serve this electric vehicles. And as a result, it was very inconvenient for the drivers. So the popular image that would see a lot of cars lining up for the gas station, that was happening for the EV charging stations for Jordan. And accordingly, they had to limit this incentives, and just to make sure or to balance what's happening within the country already. But right now you have, I think, thousands. I don't have track of the exact number of EVs in Jordan, but I believe it's over 20,000 vehicles across the country. And at the same time, you have very, very low charging stations, perhaps not more than 500 charging stations across the whole of Jordan. So there's very unbalancing between the number of charging stations versus the number of vehicles. But generally, there's also awareness, and the main also thing behind that is the cost of electricity versus the cost of fuel. Fuel is expensive in Jordan, so I think that also was one of the motivations for people to go. Even taxi drivers, they converted to electric vehicles. Egypt is very similar to Saudi Arabia in some ways. So they are focusing on local manufacturing. So they have signed an agreement with one of the Chinese manufacturing plants to locally manufacture an Egyptian brand for EVs. It's a sedan car called E70. And the first vehicle was actually launched about 2-3 months ago. So the idea is this vehicle is actually 70% manufactured in Egypt, and the idea is to have it 100% manufactured in Egypt by 2030. And also there's an angle for this, which is the capacity building. They're trying to educate the Egyptian talent so that we can have a strong base for EV manufacturing, not just for the vehicle, but also for the parts of the vehicle, including the battery, the electronics, etc. Right now, there are almost more than 250 charging points across Egypt. Actually, you can travel between the very vital points in Egypt without having to worry about the charging. So they are very well distributed across the main attractions, of course, in terms of the cities of Egypt. And there are, as we are aware of, the number of EVs so far are a little bit more than 1,000 electric vehicles across Egypt. That's very low with a country that has 110 million people. I'll share this slide. The coming few slides explain a little bit more about each country, what has been happening, so I don't have to go through that again. It just provides more details. These slides will be shared with you so you can have a look and see what's happening in each of these countries after. But just quickly, in terms of the challenges that we have identified, again, these challenges are very different from one country to the other. So it's not very wise to generalize, but we try to collect the ones that we think most, if not all, of the countries still share. So one is the lack of government support and political will in most of the countries. I think the starting point is in most of our countries, the policies are top-down. So the government has to really want to increase the adoption of EVs, whether it's for environmental or for economic reasons or even social reasons. And accordingly, if that support happens, a lot of things would move, including the support for private sector, the campaigns to raise awareness for the individuals and other things as well. And accordingly, there's some lack of incentives. Again, it's different from one country to the other, but generally there's a lack of incentives. And to be honest, even the countries that have enforced. Sorry about that. So even the countries that have really some incentives, I think there's a lot could be done. We can look at the US and Europe, China, and see there's a lot of fiscal incentives that have been provided to the EV owners, and because there has to be the belief that those EVs have an environmental impact on the country, and according to the life quality of the people who are living in this country. The other challenge that we see, especially in the Gulf region, is the cheap fuel prices, and mostly they're subsidized. So I think we need to see generally for the transition to renewables, not just EVs, removal of the subsidies, and even subsidies for renewables, including EVs. This is one of the big challenges because of a lot of cases. So EVs have reached a competitive price point with fuel internal combustion engine vehicles in other regions, but here it's a bit difficult still. So I think we need to see removal of the subsidies and more support for EVs and renewables as in general. Lack of awareness, and that's because there's not enough information provided through the formal channels for the people, and mostly they hear just from social media, which is the range anxiety, etc., which is not really true. Honestly, if you drive an EV, most people don't really need the 300 kilometers, 500 kilometers range per charge for their daily use. So I think the thing that most of the miscommunication or the lack of information about things that are not correct. And the way to do that is very simple, just creating more awareness campaigns, getting on the ground, getting people to test the vehicles and try them as well, which is something we have been trying to do as CEBC over the last few years as well. Of course, lack of infrastructure, and this one is chicken and egg, because the government would look at the infrastructure. There's not enough vehicles, so we don't have to build the infrastructure, and the EV owners will look vice versa. So I think we need to, this has to be initiated by the government and some of the early adopters or the early movers from the private sector to go ahead and install infrastructure. And what we have seen that if you have an infrastructure, this helps in the awareness point, and accordingly people will go ahead and buy EVs. One important point is the limited number of EV models, and that creates a very limited choices for the people who are willing to buy EVs, and accordingly that might change their opinion about buying or owning an EV. And that again has to link to the support for the government to make it easier for EV OEMs to launch the electric vehicles in the countries. Right now, it's a bit difficult for most of them, especially with the certification, the testing requirements, etc. And at the same time, there has to be some investment from the OEMs themselves. Opportunities, we see a lot of opportunities, but just to be mindful of the time, there's a great opportunity because again, renewables are perhaps cheapest in this region. and that creates a lot of opportunity in terms of the electricity. You are getting a clean, cheap electricity. There's
sorry,
right
Ahmed,
now.
Sorry, Ahmed, to interrupt. Please conclude, as we need to keep the timeline a bit.
Yeah, 3 seconds. Focus on local manufacturing, and again, that's going to create a lot of job opportunities, a lot of traction for EVs, stability to the grid. These EVs could be used to stabilize the grid with vehicle-to-grid technology, which is currently already being commercial. And again, a lot of new business models we have seen already with EV sharing, the last mile solutions, which are electric and micro mobility as well. That's all from my end, and thank you very much. And sorry if I took longer than I should have.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for this interesting insight view, and maybe a direct comment from my side. The challenges we see there are quite similar to a lot of other areas in different time lapse. So there are regions in a similar stage. There are regions, from my personal point of view, behind, and some regions are like pilot regions are up front, if you see it on the timeline. And exactly 2 or 3 of your challenge points, this is exactly where CharIN comes in place and would like to support and answer a lot of questions related to their challenges. And this drives me a bit to my short presentation. I will keep it as short as possible. Exactly the question, what is the role of CharIN within these electromobility ecosystem? And as an introduction, where we are, what we are doing, I mean, we are an association based on memberships. I would like to show you a video. So a short question to Ariane, can you please start the short video? Yeah. So I hope you had a chance to listen also to the video. I might have some trouble with my headphones, but I saw the pictures, and hopefully this gave you a short introduction into sorry, can you please mute? Thank you very much. So with regards to the timeline, some more inside views on CharIN. Please, next slide. What is the mission of CharIN? What is exactly the position? As we learned from the challenges Ahmed presented already, and which is well known, it's a transformation of actually two sectors. So it's a transformation of the energy sector here shown on the left side, and it's a transformation of the transport and logistics sector on the right side. And let's say the born hour of CharIN was 6-7 years back, roughly, where this challenge was visible, that to transform two big industry ecosystems into a new ecosystem, you need to have a part in between who is moderating, who is pushing requirements, who is bringing, in the first instance, people on one table to discuss these challenges, but also to discuss these opportunities. And this is exactly the role of CharIN, to provide an interface, a physical interface, a communication interface, but also a platform related to the combined charging system and the megawatt charging system to frame this transformation, with the big goal at the end to have a CO2 neutral mobility and a better planet. And this is exactly what drives us in the different focus groups. Right now we have 5 working groups staffed by our members, staffed by experts who are addressing the technical challenges, who are bundling requirements so that the right speed is given into standardization to bring the protocol forward, to bring the demands for future charging scenarios forward. Our 5 focus groups, they are all listed on the web page. Also, we will provide the slides afterwards for you, so I will not go too much into details on that. What exactly is the scope of the focus groups, of our working groups? What is discussed where? We will see on the next slide. First of all, you have with CharIN an organization who is handling from AC charging, so home charging, charging in business offices, buildings, and so on, up to megawatt charging, which is discussed up to 4.5 megawatt at the end for trucks, for marine applications, for vessels, for airplanes. And all in between is the portfolio and our focus group charging infrastructure, but also the charging connection group. They are working on increase the power level. So they are bundling requirements, they are checking test cases, safety requirements, and bringing together a lot of expertise on one table to get the, let's say, standard CCS protocol and CCS power transfer for passenger cars up to 350, 400 kilowatt range, and for the truck in the future up to 4.5 megawatt range actually. And this is the scope, and this is the only protocol and the only standard we know where this is possible, and where also products and tested and interoperability products are available. Then the approach and the scope of CharIN is definitely to do this worldwide. We are founded by European and US companies basically 6 years back, but there was a very, very speedy approach to have from each part of the world, from each position on the value chain, the big stakeholders need to take on board. We need to listen to their expertise and requirements, and this was done in a very speedy way. And Middle East is one of the regions we are focusing right now, as we see the transformation starts also in your region. Then we are talking a lot about added value. It's the, let's say, the first demand for a charging protocol, of course, is to be able to charge, to be able to be interoperable between infrastructure and cars, between all cars and all type of chargers, of course, but there are also within the transformation business models possible. So we are not focusing only on the technical approach, we are also looking an extended added value service. For example, plug and charge is in rollout in Europe right now, so that you don't need any RFID card, any credit card, any cell phone. The plug, the connector, and the car communicate to each other and can also handle the payment transfer. Then, of course, vehicle-to-grid, vehicle-to-home applications getting more and more important also in your region with the very good landscape of renewable energy possibilities. This would be definitely something the protocol needs to be considered, and this is exactly where in the focus group grid connection is discussed and where the roadmaps is existing to do that. And the scope of application, as I said, foundation was done by OEMs, passenger car OEMs mainly, but the scope right now is over the last 2 years really extending, especially with our megawatt charging system. There's a lot of interest of marine vessel, ferry, small boat applications, speedboat applications to have a high charge in a harbor, and to be able to use batteries for the transport. And the two-wheelers, also a section where we have a lot of discussions with our Indian colleagues to find possible protocol solutions also for the 2- and 3-wheeler section. So this is our scope. This is what we are handling. There are certain focus areas, but generally we have a very wide scope and a very wide approach to bring e-mobility on the next level and to also answer the questions from today and the challenges with charging, but also in the future. If we see the next slide, who is doing this? This is, of course, a question. As I said, we are looking on the value chain. So our idea is not to be the biggest club in the world. Our idea has to have all the experts joined within CharIN. And here you see on the right part of the slide the distribution. We have the grid operators, we have the EMSPs, the ICTs, the EVSE hardware manufacturers, of course. You need the OEMs from passenger cars to trucks to marine. You have the CPOs who are handling the infrastructure. You have the sub-suppliers. Our experience is to involve them right from the beginning. It's a very speedy approach to get upgrades on products, but also to get reasonable market prices for the equipment. And of course, testing and standardization is one of our big group to have an interoperable worldwide global standard, actually. Then we have basically 2 main member categories on the left side, the core members and the regular members. Beside some smaller details, the main difference is a core member can access all 5 working groups, and a regular member is appointed to 1 dedicated working group. We see a lot of movement from regular membership over the last years into the core membership, as the scope is getting extended and the value is seen by the members. We are also distributed globally, as you see, Europe, Asia, Australia, and also North America. And of course, we are also happy to welcome first Middle East members quite soon to have your certain, I can personally estimate from my experience in Qatar, Oman, and other countries, and Saudi from the past, that you will have certain special requirements, I guess, when it comes to heat, when it comes to UV, and also some charging applications in the future. But maybe Balkis will show us some more of this. When we go to the next slide, and the next 2 slides is the names of the companies. As I said, we will distribute the slides to you as well. You can have a detailed look later. Of course, you find all the members and also direct access to contact the members via our website. They are all working globally together, meaning that we have a server where as a member you get credentials and can log in, and you find all the protocols, all the minute meetings, all the position papers, and the direct contact to the companies and relevant experts within our server. We are supporting this. My team and myself are supporting this with a global coordination office set up. We have our headquarters in Berlin, in Germany, where I'm located. Then we have our offices in Hong Kong, in China, in Japan, in South Korea, and India. In North America, we are going into operation with an own CharIN Inc. In the next weeks. We have our Brussels office for the EU governmental relation topics. And we are also right now looking for a suitable and fitting setup in the Middle East. Maybe not directly with an own office. It depends always a bit on what members and possible members in governments, how we can support them. So maybe we go also with a different setup in, and this will be announced also in the coming weeks and months, I guess. This is how we operationally support this. So all these offices have all the material from CharIN. They can attend the meetings, they can give consultants and education, which is very important to eliminate this kind of challenges we see worldwide. We need to educate people, we need to educate experts, we need to educate operators for the infrastructure. And with that, I will come to my last slide for today. We have founded an own academy, a CharIN Academy for the educational framework, and we see a growing EV community and a lot of lack of protocol handling, implementation of hardware, software topics. And if you check our website, we will have from time to time our trainings. Right now, due to pandemic, it's more virtual trainings, but the next one, as you can see here, especially on the ISO 15118 protocol, it's basic and advanced training. There are I think some seats still available for the next one, but maybe if you missed that, there are other opportunities coming up, and we see a huge run on this educational trainings, and we see also a huge great feedback from the people who are in charge actually on the ground to get the infrastructure in place, to get the right framework done from governmental tenders to build up infrastructure. And this could be a quite beneficial framework to get a deep knowledge by doing this. I would, if I would have more time, I can tell you much more about our activities and why CharIN is this great ecosystem for the charging matters, but with attention to the timeline, I would like to close my presentation right now. I see there are a couple of questions. We will put them into the panel discussion at the end. So far, thank you for the attention of listening to my short presentation, and I would directly give the stage to Balkis Dakar from ABB Industries. ABB, one of our very early global members, and it's good to see also now in Middle East these technology companies supporting our protocol, and yeah, looking forward to get CCS2 and ISO 15118 inside views about challenges and opportunities in your region. Please, the stage is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andre. Hope you can hear me. So yeah, maybe you didn't have time to talk as much as you can about how great CharIN is in the CCS2 connector. Maybe I would have a chance to do so. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So my name is Balkis Dakar, and I'm the e-mobility solutions manager for the EV charging infrastructure here in the UAE and overseas countries, and we extend our support also to the Middle East and Africa. I'd like to give you an idea about ABB. I always like to talk about this because it really gives the confidence to everyone on the experiences that we had with EV charging and e-mobility in the region. As you can see here, and you probably already know that ABB is leading in the e-mobility charging infrastructure. And we have thus so far around 400,000 chargers installed, from which 20,000 are DC fast chargers and high power chargers using the CCS2 connector technology. We exist today in more than 85 countries, and I'm happy to say that we have worked really, we started penetrating the Middle East market, and we're starting to see the challenges and opportunities that we can pursue alongside with our customers. The technology we provide ranges from 3 to 600 kilowatts, types of vehicles. We're really talking about normal EVs, high-end EVs, those with the high voltages, and all the way up to trucks and buses. And we've seen a couple of cases where we're also charging boats and several other vehicles along that line. So if we go to before I go to the next slide, there are two features I'd like to discuss. One of them is the CCS2 and the other is the ISO 15118. So before I start the first one, I'd like to pull up the poll. If we can start the poll, just to get an idea of how much do you know about CCS2. And then we can just move to the next slide. So, yep. So I'd like to know what you think about how much with CCS2 you will be able to achieve 200-kilometer range within how much time? What is the fastest charging time you will be able to achieve? And with that, you will be able to extend your range with 200 kilometers. Not everybody has EVs, but please do give me your wild guess. Maybe we're going to spend 1 minute here, and then we're going to see what are the results. So if you're an EV driver, did it take 1 to 2 hours, 20 to 40 minutes, or 5 to 10 minutes? If you're not, please give me your wild guess. Well, interesting results here. It just says so much about the experience from the Middle East. And this is exactly what I thought the results would be, because that's what the infrastructure provides today. So majority believes it's 20 to 40, and right next after that, they believe it's 5 to 10. Nice. If we move to the next slide, I would very much agree with, of course, the 20 to 40, but believe it or not, with CCS2, you can actually achieve charging time between 5 to 10 minutes. The infrastructure that exists today, the charging power is all the way up to 175, which is operational. And I'd like to share with you some of the experiences we had of the first installation of high power. And that was back in 2019 with a couple of the car OEMs. So we did test the CCS2. And while we were hoping to enjoy the luxury of fast charging within a few minutes, we were able to, of course, with 175 kilowatt, charge within 20 minutes throughout the whole year, including high temperature months. And that is the challenge that I want to focus on today, because this is the most common challenge that we see here in the region, specifically in the Gulf. If you look at the chart, it just shows you while the CCS2 is capable of delivering around 500 amps, really that changes as the temperature goes higher. So each color represents a different temperature. But as long as we are able to achieve charging time within 20 minutes, that's so far pretty much acceptable if you look at the chart right here. And what we have noticed during that test is that really the derating that we see in the existing infrastructure will range between 30 to 40%. And we have managed through this pilot to gather this data and really improve on the cooling performance of our chargers. And I'm proud to say that with our new generation 3 high power charger, we will be able to charge continuously at 148 kilowatt, and the derating will go between 15 to 20%. This is a remarkable achievement. And this is always the conversation that we have with our customers who are operating high power chargers. And they would like to ensure that the drivers really get a premium experience. Even though temperature is posing a challenge, but really, if you think about it, that will be more like between 3 to 4 months during the year here in the Gulf, at least. And while derating might seem like it's reducing the power, this is a very essential feature, especially because this is the way you can save the life of the equipment. The feature that is requested also by the charge point operators, because this way they will keep the cooling going and extend the life of the equipment at the same time, try as much as possible to deliver as much power as they can. And by far, CCS2, comparing to any other connector, has been successful in delivering this expectation. And what I see the opportunity next is to step up the power from 175 to 350, and we will definitely charge between 5 to 10 minutes. Challenges besides the temperature that I see always in the conversation with our customers is grid limitation and stability, and this is more like on the on the African continent side. There is a big question about because how stable is the grid, and do we have enough power to allow these high power charging to deliver, to be able to charge within a short time. So these are some of the open questions today, but there are definitely solutions for them, and I will be happy to discuss that with you later. So before I move to the next slide, I'd like to pull another poll. So we're going to talk about ISO 15118, and I'd like to know how much do you know about that? So what is the main feature of ISO 15118? Is it smart charging? Is it plug and charge, or vehicle to grid? Probably we'll spend 1 minute over there until we get your answers. This is to be honest, here in the Middle East is a new feature. I don't expect you all to know this, but give me your wild guess. Yeah. All right, here we go. So everybody believes that ISO 15118 is smart charging, and next believes it's V2G, and then plug and charge. It really does reflect the experience of Middle East and Africa, because everybody knows about smart charging, and we started talking about vehicle to grid. It's being discussed all over in the Middle East. But plug and charge is what we are not discussing, and this is the main feature of the ISO 15118. So ISO 15118, if you go to the next slide, is basically the promoting for the technology of plug and charge. So what is plug and charge? Briefly, if you look at this slide, what it does basically, the vehicle will send it what they call the vehicle ID, and the charger will send this information back to the back office, and it will the back office using OCPP will authorize the charger to start charging. So it's a fully automated authentication without you having to pull out your RFID cards. And the next level of ISO 15118 is really to reach to the point where you don't even have to pull out your credit card. So you'll be basically charging, authenticating the charger by simply plugging in and walk away. And by the time you're done, probably you will receive a message that you're done charging, and off you can go. Now, this was actually demonstrated in one of our integration tests with one of some of the utility companies that we are working together as of today. At that time, the feature that we used was available with ABB was auto charge, which is much more simpler of what plug-in and charge can actually do. And it did demonstrate this authentication, automatic authentication. And for the customer, that was like, wow, we've never seen this before. So the potential is high. The Middle East region is very much hungry for anything new. And because they are at the stage of piloting, and there are so many pilots happening in the UAE and several other countries, the problem with that is each one is doing their own pilots, and each one will draft their own policies. And when it comes to such features and software integration, the next question will be, is the policies today supporting these kind of features? Because the minute you talk about software, you talk about data, and then right after that, the discussion will go about security. So comparing to RFID card, 15118 proved to be way much more secured. There's a lot more details that we can discuss on that. But what I can tell you for sure, challenges when we showcase such technologies, new technologies, is whether the infrastructure is ready to adopt these technologies, because it keeps to move to draft new policies to adopt these technologies. So these are some of the opportunities and challenges we see with ISO 15118. And with that, I'd like to conclude by my message, and it's you'll find it there in the next slide. Nothing will really work unless we come together, and this is the way we really want to work with CharIN, CEBC, and whoever is out there to bring their information and experiences to draft the right policies, let's say, and adopt the technologies right there when it's available. So with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward for the panel discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Balkis. And I see questions dropping in, so would be great to have you in the panel later. And in front of the panel, I would like to give the stage to Mr. Faisal Ali Rashid, Senior Director, Demand Side Management of Dubai Supreme Council of Energy. Welcome very much to our CharIN Tuesday, and the stage is yours, and we are looking forward to hear from you how Dubai is moving forward into green mobility, what's the actual status, and what are future scenarios. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very pleased to be part of this online event and look forward for the Q&A. What I'll bring to, I think, within my short time, high-level government perspective, and especially specifically related to Dubai. So we have realized, I think, the importance of green mobility within our strategy, which is basically part of our bigger strategy, Clean Energy Strategy 2050, and then we have the Dubai Integrated Energy Strategy, covering the supply of energy as a whole and also the demand side management. And then on top of that, we have the green mobility initiative, then converted into strategy. So when we did, I think, the strategy in 2016, we looked at all aspects. What is the potential? What is the what can be considered on the horizon 2025? What is the business case for adopting full-scale green vehicle? And also, we keep a close eye on the tipping point for the cost parity for EV and hybrid as well. And of course, what investment or how much investment do we need to put for the infrastructure, especially the charging point and so on, and how we can also promote the market as well. And I think it's, everybody knows some of the best practices across the world, what Norway has done in terms of raising the, in terms of having the annual sale of EV reaching 85% and so, and what China has done in terms of buses reaching more than 500,000 maybe electric buses. And also the what we understand, the C40 also, city committed to buying only 2020 only e-buses by 2025. So to bring the I think the matter locally here in Dubai, and how the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy is supporting UAE market as well in terms of increasing the share of green vehicle. And so we have within our strategy, we have completed an adopted green mobility strategy. The Dubai Supreme Council of Energy also mandated all government entity to include 10% EV and hybrid within their annual new sale, only to reach 10% EV and hybrid by 2020, and we have achieved this target. And of course, the bigger picture is basically to have 10% of all vehicles in Dubai to be green by 2030. and this is more challenging. We understand very well. It requires not only, I think, it's not about putting a directive or policy. It's about promoting the market. It's about giving incentive. It's about working closely with the, I think, with the car dealer to bring more cars. It's many things we have to do. So now I'd like to jump to my slide. As I mentioned, the target is put within the directive, and we have a strong measurement and verification to monitor the progress of EV and hybrid within our dashboard. As you can see, the share of green vehicle, if I define them hybrid and EV, started for government to be 0.5 in 2015. And as we speak today, we are close to 9% total fleet and government are basically green vehicle. And we monitor also the purchase every year, which is basically close to, as I said, more than 10%. And I'm showing within the dashboard the number, which you can see for Dubai overall, 435 in 2015, and more than 10,000 in 2021, and for government also reaching more than 3,000 total EV and hybrid as well. As I said before, or maybe I haven't mentioned, we have also updated the directive to basically increase the penetration to 20% by 2025 and 30% by 2030. And based on the figure I'm showing, I think you might ask, this might not basically achieve the real cut down to petroleum product in the next 5 years or so, but I think it gives us an opportunity to, I think, to create the market, to attract the manufacturer to bring more cars, to also listen to their challenges. You know, they might also put the government on the test in terms of required policy or missing policy that we need to put together. We have already put a soft incentive in the past in 2018 for like free car charging point. It was extended till end of this year, and free registration as well, and so on. Can you move to the next or last slide? This is just a different form of presenting the same. I'm just putting numbers instead of graph. So as you can see, the government registered EV out of total is only 7%. So this is considered low for government fleet for EV. They are, I think, more going toward hybrid, because in Dubai and the UAE, I think more model available in hybrid. That's why this is, I think, an important piece where we have to work with the car dealers to bring more or different type of model. Not only, I think, Tesla, as we speak today, only Tesla has variety of model. The rest, I think, there are, I think, promises, but I think 2022 might be the year where we have more, I think, green vehicles or EV vehicle. So this is very much part of our strategy. We look forward to achieve more and share with the public, and I look forward for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashid, for this inside view on the actual status and on the future developments. So we have 15 minutes roughly left for our panel discussion. So I would like to invite all the panelists to switch on their camera. Unfortunately, Ahmed had to leave due to a private emergency case, so he cannot join. but maybe I can, beside being a moderator, step in and also could give some feedbacks on more CharIN or general global discussion points. The first question I would like to address to the panel, and I would have addressed that to CharIN, is do you see energy utilities, oil and gas companies moving into the EVSE ecosystem in the MENA region, a trend very much visible in Europe, Americas, and China? And as Ahmed is not here, I can maybe give the view on Europe, Americas, and China. It's like the audience is questioning that. I think CharIN started 6 years back with OEMs and EVSE manufacturers only. And after 2 to 3 years, we saw a very big trend that oil and gas companies join CharIN, that they get interest and attention on the EV ecosystem. We saw this in different places in the world, not only America, not only Europe. We see it also in Asia. We see it in Southeast Asia, that a lot of big, also governmental oil and gas companies joining, that these companies bringing also experts into CharIN and creating a picture of the future. So far, we have no company from MENA region being officially member, but what I can say is we are in discussion with companies together with Ahmed, that they are, let's say, in a process and on the way to join. So I feel quite comfortable that we see this global trend, of course, also happening in the Middle East quite soon. So maybe and hopefully this answer this question. Then the question maybe to Balkis. How relevant could the megawatt charging system be in the future? Keeping in mind also the grid constraints. Where could we see major applications? Depots, destination, loading, unloading, docks, en route. This is a question especially addressed to the megawatt charging system.
Yeah, my comment on that would be, this is more where you see fleet operations, really a large number of EVs that are continuously 24/7 charging. And typically the case will be, of course, in public transport, where they have large number of buses. Let's not forget, of course, taxi fleets, last mile logistics, companies like Amazon, you name it. This is where you will probably see the megawatt charging trend happening, because if you look at the power distribution system today, gradually we are shifting towards a much more, let's say, a DC sort of setup throughout the whole infrastructure of the power distribution. And it will make more sense that you draw the power from the high voltage to medium voltage side, and then you start distributing it across, let's say, the charging points in that depot location, for example. This could also be some a setup that could be considered at large forecourt of charge. I'm not sure if we haven't seen this yet here in the Middle East, but it is an attractive, let's say, a concept that could possibly be adopted. But the trend right now is to look at, okay, I need to put a lot of charge points in one location, and I need as much power as possible to keep these fleets charging and operating on 24/7. So depots, public transport fleet is the way, is the places where we see megawatt charging happen.
Thank you very much. I hope this question is answered. One question I would like to address to Mr. Rashid. There is a very specific question of the audience. What do you think, or what is your guess, how many charging stations will be available in 5 or in 10 years? So is this something you would like to answer for UAE or for Dubai especially?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that we already basically counting the number of EV and Dubai based on the registration from the Road and Authority, the Road and Transport Authority. So we get this on a monthly basis, and we have also executive committee as well, where they are a member, DY is a member also, looking at from the charging point perspective, and also we have other key stakeholders are part of this. So I think if you look at the number of EV today is close to 3,000 plus, and then more than 300 charging point. I think we are very much on track, despite being low, but I think it's leading the region still in a way. So we don't have sort of a specific number, because the strategy is still, I think the growth is still not mature. At some point it will get mature in terms of knowing how many, I think, EV basically will be used every year. As we see our number in the past, it fluctuated. The growth, goes a bit faster, accelerate. But I think at some point it will become like a solar, where it will be the growth will be steady, and then we'll be able to put sort of more focused strategy. Like for the solar, I think it's very clear for us. We have defined the 2030. We have defined even 2050. But for the EV, I think softly we have only addressed the target or the penetration, which I said 10% by 2030, and we still have to do a lot of work, internally within the government, and also work alongside the private sectors as well.
Thank you very much. Maybe one more question to you, for you, Mr. Rashid, which is going in a similar direction. And what incentives are existing for the public sector in Dubai, especially in order to spread the EV adoption? Are there incentives existing, and what type? I understand the question, and what type of incentives are there or will be there in future?
Yeah, I think the strong belief is to basically create some sort of self-finance motivated model, like for the solar, but incentive, or what I call a soft incentive, already given in the past for the, as I said, for the charging point, for the registration, for the parking as well, and perhaps in the future we will revisit to see whether anything else can be given. We always, I think, keep our, I think, we're open to basically exchange with the Clean Energy Business Council in terms of hearing the voice of the stakeholders as well. What are the missing policy? What are the things that we haven't maybe considered? Not only Dubai, I think it's the UAE, the GCC as well. I'm sure there are other things that we need to hear from the private sectors, where we can take it internally and discuss it, and then see the viability for implementing a certain policy, certain incentive. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashid. One more question dropping in for Balkis. Can the charger be placed inside the building, for example, a parking area? And if yes, what are possible electric and telecom things and ratings which have to be considered?
Yeah, pretty technical, I would say. Yes, we did install chargers inside buildings. That's actually perfect for them because it's quite hot in here, and the air conditioning would be really nice. Yeah, that's possible, of course. In terms of high power charging indoors, the question always, do you have spare available? And the first thing you would check, and really the spare for high power chargers ranges between, if we're talking in amps, like 300 to 500 amps input. And in terms of kilowatt, you're really talking about 200 to 400 kilowatts. So that's huge amount of power, not really always available. When it comes to, so what we normally do is we do what we call energy audit, and chances are you can source 30% at least from the energy that you barely use. as a spare. And that's how we manage that, how to source power. So what you need to consider when you find out that there is no spare is try to conduct energy audit exercises or assessment to find if there is hidden spares. That's what you probably need to consider. Telecom, of course, the charger, better connected, because now the services are remote. And with the remote services, believe it or not, you will cut down in terms of cost in operation and maintenance all the way up to 50%. If it's not connected, you lose that advantage. And in telecom bases, all I need is internet. So if you can provide internet connection with a wireless 3G, perfect. So I guess I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, as you said, it's a quite technical question, and if you go in the details there, I guess it's a lot more to explain, but thank you for that overview. Then I would like to address one question to all of you joining the panel today. Is there any, it's coming from the audience, is there any plan in the GCC region or in UAE about stopping importing vehicles with conventional combustion engines? Is there any plan? Is there any timeline? Or is this something still to be considered?
Yeah, the only thing, I think Dubai is basically a member of C40 city community, and I think they have a target of using e-buses by 2025, I think. So I think there are some sort of, I wouldn't say a commitment, but it is under discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But not
Thank you.
for
And okay. Mm-hmm.
And one thing I add also, I think one important thing is the disruption. Whenever you basically do an energy transition, I think you have to realize one thing, and we have done it for the solar. You want to have a smooth transition because you already have an infrastructure, you already have an economy. Let's say for the for the fossil fuel, the infrastructure is already there, the gas station, etc., and so on. You don't want to have some sort of, I think no one has done this in the past, where you can say 50% by 2022 or 2023. You always want to have a smooth transition where it gives you a chance to sort of move slowly toward the green target, whether for solar, whether for EV, whether for future hydrogen as well. This, I think, will reduce the economic disruption, where I think every country, if we, from the energy perspective, advocate the acceleration of EV and other green vehicle, and then we have other decision makers as well who look at the economic aspect, they want us to go slowly. So this has always been in the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Rashid. So yeah, Balkis, maybe one more or one last comment with regards to the timeline, please.
Yeah, yeah. From what we see, the language that has been used before has completely changed. We used to hear terms like green vehicles, green transport, and in that term, what they mean is hybrid and electric. And hybrid in our market does not necessarily mean 100% electric. And this language has started to change. Only just last year, I started to see a strong push from the customers saying, no, we are going electric. And electric does not mean battery electric. It means hydrogen, battery, and several other technologies. So are we going to go 100%? I hardly believe that, but probably 50 to 70% from 5 to 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Saidi, any comment on that? Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. No, not. Yeah, now, I guess now.
Yeah. Right, okay. Just a comment wasn't really about the oil and gas companies, because I think they are the single most important driver of the transition. Remember that this is a region which produces more than 40% of the world's oil and gas, right? So the energy transition is in many ways an existential threat. Now, the oil companies understand this, and they are going to be going into downstream activities, which will include electric vehicles. They will have to do that. They will have to diversify. And I think that will be a game changer, because as they get involved, then you can get maybe a smooth transition. Otherwise, you are threatening their major interests. And although we do not produce cars in the region, which means that unlike Europe or the United States, the vehicle manufacturers are not there to oppose the transition to electric vehicles, right? US, you can see that already, and even in Europe, there is opposition from the automobile sector. We don't have that, so we don't have the opposition there. So we can introduce them more easily. However, the big issue is the role of the oil and gas companies. So I think what is interesting to observe in the decade to come is how they will react to that. I think they're already interested in solar power. I think they will be big investors in the solar power industry. We're seeing that already. But they haven't really addressed the issue of electric vehicle and that space and how it will develop. That will be, I think, the most interesting thing to look at. And I just want to applaud really our good friend Faisal Rashid for the role that the Dubai Supreme Energy Council is doing, Council of Energy is doing. They're really promoting a vision of what Dubai can be. And for anybody who's going to be visiting Dubai, this will be one of the themes of Expo 2020. So there'll be a lot about mobility and of course, e-mobility. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saidi. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are unfortunately out of time. I guess there are more questions dropping in. What I can promise to the audience is we will cluster these questions. There will be the video available at the end. There will be, as long as we have contact details, we will distribute the answers to everyone. The slides of our presenting companies and people from today will be available. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to support as CharIN the development and the transformation, which is, like you said, not always easy, but it's a clear way, it's a clear view, and we are happy to support that. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.